Hard work is so often the answer, and the question is so often irrelevant. If you focus on the process, the outcome is inevitable.
You have just spent the last 157 days to become the first swimmer to circumnavigate the whole of Great Britain.
This wasn't a physical experiment, it was mental. You're alone with your own thoughts. Your true self will be revealed to you whether you like it or not. I remember thinking, why are you doing this? The wounds are open wounds, just chafing the salt, or your tongue's falling apart. You've not been warm for 157 days. You're scraping ice off your wetsuit. I want to be warm and just have Sunday dinner with my family. As humans, we don't need a lot to be happy.
This was kind of born out of a failure, right?
I had failed to swim from St. Lucia to Martinique. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. It lit a fire under my belly. I kind of wanted that fairy tale ending, and then you got it. For those people to come out at the end, I felt reverberated across the sea, the energy.
I think you were feeling this overwhelming connectivity, spirit of life.
You're feeling something so powerful that it actually has an effect on your biology. It's just a little bit strange that I had to swim around Great Britain to almost discover that, but when you are in complete exhaustion, you find the most honest version of yourself.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
My good friend Ross Edgley is back from the Great British Swim. Yes, folks, 157 days at sea. He swam 1,791 miles, swimming twice a day for 6 hours each time, sometimes as much as 17, 18 miles a day. Ross is really an incredible phenomenon, but his attitude is amazing. And he also talked about those dark moments when he was out there, really being connected to nature, having a tragedy with his family at home, and he had to really race to get back there. This is an incredible human feat, and it shows why Ross is one of the leading guys when it comes to human performance and breaking a lot of the myths that we believe when it comes to endurance and strength. I know you're going to enjoy my time with Ross. He's just such an incredible guy, and I was just so honored that the day after he got back, he came straight to London Reel Studios. And inside the studio, we are pushing the limits as well. I'm getting my students to do things that they feel uncomfortable about, to do things that look like the Great British Swim, which might be starting a business from scratch, maybe publicly speaking or starting their own podcast. I personally mentor my students to take action and get results, and this is more about what we do.
London Reel doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Reel Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ross Edgley, the athlete, adventurer, and author with a decade-long career in sport, fitness, and nutrition. You have just spent the last 157 days to become the first swimmer to circumnavigate the whole of Great Britain, some 1,791 miles, nearly 3,000 kilometers without touching land. Swimming up to 12 hours a day and consuming up to 15,000 calories per day. You finished yesterday. Previously, you set world records climbing the height of Mount Everest on a rope continuously over 24 hours. I was there. And running a marathon pulling a 1.4-ton car. Ross, welcome back to London Real for the third time.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, and that is weird that this time yesterday, I was taking my first steps on land for 157 days.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about this off air, that what feels so nice about this is you're one of the first to know that I was about to do it. So we were talking about this after I launched the book, and this feels nice to kind of bookend it, because I spoke to you at the start and said, look, Brian, I'm thinking of swimming around Great Britain. You were like, what? And I said, look, I got it all figured out. And then now I'm speaking to you afterwards.
Yeah, that interview was in February. The book had just come out.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, and you were scheming about this great swim. And I want to get into all the details of the swim. Before we do that, I want to quote you. And this is a quote that you said recently. It was on one of your Instagram pieces, and it's this. It's my hope that people remember the Great British Swim as an example or an experiment in both mental and physical fortitude. This lost art of grit and determination that we used to have in the golden era of exploration. Hard work is so often the answer. The question is so often irrelevant. That's fucking powerful, dude.
It sounds better in your voice.
That is so powerful.
Right, yeah.
What does that mean, that last sentence?
I got swimming, and when we spoke all that time in February, I didn't realize how much that swimming solitary confinement would affect me. But you are left alone with your own thoughts. Over 157 days, swimming for 12 hours a day, we worked out I spent probably over 20 to 30 days on my own, staring at the bottom of a seabed with earplugs in, so I can't hear anything, I can't smell anything. So you are just purely left alone with your own thoughts. And when we spoke again in February, it was purely a theory at the time. And we spoke about, central governor theory. And I was saying to you, Brian, I believe that fatigue's an emotionally driven state that you use and your brain basically gets you to pull that physiological handbrake, to make sure that you maintain homeostasis. You don't do any damage to yourself, self-preservation mechanisms. And I said, I theorize that you can override this. And you were doing Iron Mind at the time, and I was saying, there's gonna be that moment during your Ironman, and it's relative, it doesn't matter. You doing your Ironman, me swimming around Great Britain, it doesn't matter. Somebody going to run their first 10-kilometer race, they've never run before. They're gonna get to that point where their body says, this is fatigue, pull the physiological handbrake, don't do damage to yourself. So that part at the end where I said, hard work is so often the answer and the question is so often irrelevant. What I meant by that was during the Great British Swim and going back to the central governor theory, swimming became a really small part of it. It was just, are you gonna get in, scrape ice off your wetsuit, which I had to Aberdeen. I remember it was the first day of autumn. I left my wetsuit out to dry. It was 2:00 in the morning, the tide had changed. And I put and I was like, and it's just a thin layer of ice. And I scraped it off, and I'm just putting it on like that. And no one was asking me to. I didn't have to get in the water, but if I didn't, that's a 6-hour tide that's gone. That could be 15 miles. And if you miss 15 miles and you add up just a few of those, all of a sudden, the window to actually swim around Great Britain, which is the British summer, which is very, very short. You're thinking kind of May to, and we've been lucky that I finished just yesterday. So, November the 4th, I was lucky that we had a really good summer. Right. Because it would have become impossible. We had Storm Callum and Storm Ali. They came in, and if you're trying to swim around the top of Scotland in a storm, boats don't go around the top of Scotland. Never mind a swimmer.
Really?
So when
the weather.
Yeah, okay. You're not going around Cape Wrath at the top there, so northwest Scotland. You're not going around the top of there if you're getting Arctic winds from Iceland. 50 knots smashing into the side of the west of Scotland. You're not going past there in a boat. You'll be just, people have lost their lives out there, and so. When I say hard work is so often the answer, the question is irrelevant. What I mean by that is, on the Great British Swim, the limiting factor, the defining factor wasn't how high my elbows were on a swim, how streamlined I was, what was my head position. None of that mattered. But are you going to put your face in the water, and are you going to get in for 6 hours and make 12 miles? Because if you do, you might make it around the top of Scotland before the British winter comes in, and that's it. You can't, literally, the gates are closed. You're now not swimming around Great Britain. Not because you can't and you're fatigued, the British weather's not letting you. So that's what I meant by that it's hard work's the answer, not my leg kick, not my arm position.
Did you ever think about quitting?
And I've been asked this, honestly, no, but I want to caveat that with, in no way am I saying, no, I was really brave and bold and I'm really tough, I am. No, that's couldn't be. And someone even said, it was amazing, Ross, that you never broke down and cried. And I was like, no, but that's not because I didn't want to.
These success secrets are only available on the London Real Academy. Become a member and get access to live shows, exclusive courses, my webinars, bonus content, meetups, live events, an amazing community, and much, much more. Now back to the rest of the show.
I use that same philosophy on Ironman that you taught me, which was, I'm gonna finish. It might take me 6 hours or 6 days or 6 weeks, but I'm gonna finish this goddamn course.
Yeah.
So once that's in your mind, it's like, okay, now we're talking about the time it takes to finish.
Yeah.
So, I guess in your mind, you were gonna show up in Mark 8 somehow.
Yeah.
Of course, the weather might have prevented you, but you had that mindset, which just means, okay, get your face down and get it done.
You're right. I mean, looking at almost Stoic philosophy as well, and I was reading so much on, Marcus Aurelius meditations, and I was reading so much of that, and you're right. You sit there and think, what can I control? Well, I can control that the words I quit are never going to come out of my mouth, ever. I'm never going to entertain that. And I think, especially, and you can relate to this, certainly when you did Ironmind, you are left alone with your own thoughts on the bike, on the run, or the swim. It doesn't matter. The same way that I was on the swim. And because you can't speak to your family and friends, you're alone. You're alone with your own thoughts. So if you entertain the idea and you go, maybe I can quit. Oh, there's land over there. Oh, there's a hotel there, And that's why I said I never wanted to touch land, because I think it could have been very easy to check into a hotel and all of a sudden it's quite warm. And all of a sudden I look over and I look out to sea and there's 40 knots of wind and I go, oh, should we call it today? And again, that's 12 miles you've missed out. You don't swim at night, that's 30 miles you miss out on that day. That's longer than the channel, just because you didn't get out of bed. Right. It's so easy to do that. But so by just fully immersing yourself in it, living on the boat, and again, I was just saying, Anthony Middleton, celebrated sort of military career, and one of the best advice I got from him, and he knows me, we've known each other for like 3 years now, and you always say, oh, you're so smiley, Ross. And Anthony said the same. He's like, yeah, you're really positive, but a word of warning, that'll only get you so far. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. It's going to be nice. I like
worked for 30 years.
It's kind of it. And he said to me, no. He said, Ross, there's going to be a moment where it's dark, and it's really dark. And he said, no one can help you. You got a crew, and they're amazing. He goes, but it's just going to come down to you, and it's you and the sea. And the advice he said to me, he was just like, he said, Ross, you just need to get feral. And I remember he looked me dead in the eye, and because he wanted this point to hammer home, I think, and it did, because he kind of gave me this look to be like, just remember these words, like when those dark clouds come over, get feral. And I said, what do you mean? And he just said, you need to just think like primitive, strip everything back, where you just think swim, sleep, eat. And that's all, and he joked a little bit, you just need to get like Cameron and just be like, Ross eat, Ross sleep, not like going, hey guys, is everyone not on, Instagram? You need to just be like, and he was right, for so long, I was able to, I suppose there's almost probably like a coping mechanism, but it was also for myself as well, that, I was very aware that this was 157 days. So again, I always loved that particular episode on Ironman when you just got on that bike and you were swimming in lactic acid, and you were using every tool in your arsenal, thinking about your kids and everything like that. And you got real angry, you got emotional, and then afterwards you were like, but I knew I couldn't go to that place because I had 157 days. And the body's this biochemical complex organism. So you start getting stressed, cortisol levels, stress hormone, your immune system start adrenal fatigue, neurotransmitters, chemical signals in the brain are fried. So I needed to maintain this level, not here. Yeah. And I think when to come back to sort of swimming with a smile, as I said, that's why I was doing that. And it was always trying to care for the body, and just, people have shown, psychological well-being in your immune system directly related. So I would try and swim with a smile But when I had to get feral as well. And there was times when I almost felt like this split personality. And I almost sometimes would apologize to the crew because I'd be like, hey guys, how we doing? And I knew that it would get me through a tide that day because I'm swimming with dolphins and the sunset and there's a minke whale and seals are waving to me. And I was like, this is amazing. You want to be in the moment. This is incredible. And there's other times when you're swimming through the Moray Firth and the Moray Firth, you're 40 miles from land. And there was barely a moon in the sky. It was overcast as well, so not even the light from the stars. You couldn't see the hand in front of your face when you were swimming. And I remember because I was trying to look at my watch and I'm swimming and I'd look at my watch and I was like, nope, can't see. And it was that dark. And you're getting hit in the face. During a 6-hour night swim, I could be stung up to 20 times by jellyfish. So it's just, and that's another thing. It's hard for me to explain because you're swimming and you're kind of like, I know I'm going to get hit. I just don't know what, bang, and you're like, oh, but I could get out and feel sorry for myself. I'm in the middle of the Moray Firth. So the other thing there is, if I get out, feel sorry for myself, the team have got to stay out in the Moray. The boat's got to stay out in the Moray Firth. A storm comes in and we're no longer safe as a boat. So okay, fine, I'm stung and I keep swimming.
More pressure on you.
Yeah.
Didn't a jellyfish stay stuck on your face for like a half an hour in one of the whirlpools out there?
Yeah. That was hands down the worst bit. So this is, that's a good example of just getting feral. So the Corrie of Ecken, so it's in Inner Hebrides of Scotland, one of the world's biggest whirlpools. Ships have gone down, there, people have lost their lives. So when swimming through there, you're almost like swimming on hallowed ground. It's almost like swimming through a graveyard. Like you treat it with so much respect. So certainly not smiling and it was like, wow, okay. And we're swimming and Captain Matt Knight, turns to me and he said, Ross, I need you to swim like hard for this tide. I mean, you go all out because if you stop and you go into the whirlpool, like seriously, we're in trouble. And I remember he looked at me with this sobering look. I was like, right, okay, no smiles, get feral. So you're right.
It's a whirlpool, like in the movies.
The full-on whirlpool.
Okay.
When you start researching it as well, like it's kind of like cemented in Scottish folklore, and there's a hag goddess who like governs the whirlpool. And this gets weird because I was like reading this, like hag goddess and kelpie, which are these water spirits. And I'm reading this, and the fishermen are going, yeah, watch out for the kelpie. And I'm like, kelpie, hag goddess. But honestly, I'm like kind of laughing. And then when I'm there, the way that the wind like howls down the Inner Hebrides between the islands, and then you're like, maybe there is a hag goddess, you're like, whoa, okay. So, I'm swimming and for 6 hours I'm swimming hard. And, just those words from Matt echoing in my head, like you swim or you disappear down a whirlpool. I'm swimming, my shoulders are on fire, lactic acid, I'm swimming. Again, the ocean doesn't care about pacing strategies, feeding strategies, but I'm bang, down, keep swimming. And then I'm stung. But this jellyfish sting, it just felt different. It was painful, but it lingered and it was searing into my skin. I was like, this one just feels different, but so I was just swimming. I swim for like about another hour, just thinking I don't want to be down at the bottom whirlpool until I can't stand the pain anymore. And I look up, I said, Matt, I've been stung, but I said, it's still stinging. Like this side of my face is numb. And Matt looks at me and goes, yeah, mate, it's still on your face. And it was just hanging. And it had threaded through my goggles. So I was swimming for an hour through a whirlpool with it just like slapping against my face.
And this is already after you had grown some kind of immunity to the poison and you had been stung a bit.
Yeah.
And it's still just repeatedly stinging you.
Yeah. But again, and this sounds weird, the pain's the nicest bit about it. And what I mean by that is after that, I unthreaded the tentacle from my goggles. I pulled it off. I was like, whoa. And then I tried to put my goggles back on, but by which point my face had been stung so much. And there's a picture actually, my eyes were like bigger than my eye sockets. So my goggles no longer actually fitted to my face. And again, all this is going on and I can laugh about it now, but Matt's going, swim, whirlpool, just yelling. So in the end, I end up putting my goggles on. It's kind of sealed, but it's sort of my face has changed shape at this point. And then like in almost desperation, I just punch myself in both eyes. So it just kind of indents into my face. And I'm like, So now I've just got like goggles punched into my face. And I finished the swim. Looking back, I laugh about it now and people laugh about that tentacle story. But at the time, and again, there's a picture where I collapse onto the back of the net on the boat. And I mean collapse. And Matt was just like, okay, I said, just give me 5 minutes. And I just lay there like that. And then I eventually got up, and again, but with no time I was just like, logically, I need my face to change shape because the tide's changing in 6 hours.
6 hours.
So we survived the whirlpool. Yeah, and honestly, so that was Corryvreckan. We probably still had like 1,000 miles still to swim. Okay. So after all that, you go, whoa, and you go, yeah. Again, central governor theory, hard work is so often the answer, the question is irrelevant. After all of that, are you still going to get in 6 hours, when the tide changes? And if the answer is yes, you might make it all the way around Great Britain. If the answer is no, then stop now, because it's only going to get worse. That's not even Cape Wrath. We still had the top of Scotland. We still had the Moray Firth, the Firth of Forth. Down the East Coast, we still had 2 storms to contend with. So after all of that, people go, that's a crazy story. Oh, it's like, yeah, that wasn't even halfway.
What does going feral look like for you? What does that mean to people? If I got to meet the feral Ross,
yeah.
What's he look like? What's he act like? Does he look at me? Does he grunt?
I think it's. Do you know what? Look, I think feral. Yeah, it's trying to like. With the Royal Marines, they always said again, when you are completely fatigued and feral, you have the cognitive functioning of like a 5-year-old. You're exhausted. Don't expect anything eloquent to come out of my mouth. And certainly when me and Matt, the captain, he was amazing, and we had this way of communicating where it was so crisp. I'd just like pop my head up. And I'd go, banana please, like that, almost sign language. So it'd be like, banana please, he'd kneel like banana, he'd throw me a banana, I'd eat it. And I'd just go, how many knots? And he'd say, you're swimming at like 3 knots. I'd go, thank you, bang, and swim. So it was that, not like, hey Matt, did you see the sunset? But and I use this term like a chivalrous savage. And what I mean by that is, and this is probably just because my mum and dad, that I was always raised to be polite. And the reason for that is because certainly the team were amazing. And nobody asked me to go and do this. No one was forcing me to do it. So the moment you're rude to someone and you go, give me a banana, it's just like, Ross, no, no one's for, we could easily go home, like this is, so as much as feral as I was, it's probably me, but less talkative.
Okay.
And less smiley, but still polite. I always think it's important to be polite.
Okay. Let's back up. Why do this in the first place? And tell me about this guy named Captain Webb, who you've quoted a few times.
Yeah, I think having gone round and certainly spoke to a lot of people on the coast, there is this. If you say an eccentric British explorer, you go, yeah, I get what you mean, and Captain Webb for me embodies that. So Captain Webb, first guy to ever swim across the English Channel. At the time, 1875, they said it's impossible. The water's too cold, it's too treacherous, the tides are too strong, it cannot be done. But Captain Webb, and this is what I love, in a woolen wetsuit on a diet of brandy and beef broth, said, no, I think it can be done. And then August, looked across the English Channel and breaststroked his way all the way across with his head up because, and I love this bit, front crawl was ungentlemanly like. That for me, I was like, yes, Captain Webb. And everyone was just like, whoa. Now he did it in a time, I believe, like 23 hours, just, battling the waves, and, the support crew were telling him, get in, like, take the boat. And he was just like, breaststroke, like, no, more brandy, and he did it. And I'm like, yes. And his time of 23 hours, I think the fastest channels from now is something around 6 hours. It's more, than halved. But nothing captured the imagination of the world like Captain Webb, because everyone was like, wow, it can be done. And now look at the number of people who have swum the English Channel. Look what he started. And in so many ways, back in February when I said to you, I want to swim around Great Britain, you said the best word just now, actually. You said you were scheming, and I was scheming in February, because it definitely wasn't set in concrete. And I was speaking to port authorities, who were like, you want to do what? Because there's no blueprint for it. So everyone's like, I'm going to have to check on this. Like, wait, you want to do firing squads? Obviously there's live firing ranges that shoot, live ammo out into the sea. Oh. And we were going to swim all the way across that. So, the captain would be like radioing through Matt, just being like, Hecate, which is the name of the boat, Hecate, just checking in here. We've got a swimmer in the water. Are you still firing? And they'd be like, say again, So I was scheming in February, but it had the feel of Captain Webb. It really had that. And what has been so nice is so many people have been so honest and open. And you only have to look at the very first episode on Red Bull TV where you look at the number of comments and you'll know, you get it. There was loads on social media just like, oh, he's a funny shape, he's not meant to be swimming. People even saying, like, making bets, going like, I guarantee he will like quit before Isle of Wight, you know, which is half the south coast. You know, I should have taken those bets.
Did you read all those comments?
Oh yeah, I read all of them. And I liked them. Because it should be, and I didn't take them personally, I was like, this is a melting pot, an exchange of ideas. But what's been the nicest is some of those people even screenshotted their own comment. And when I was coming into Margate, said, I've got a confession to make. I said you would never do it. I said you wouldn't even get as far as Land's End, you know, and I wanted to actually be there to congratulate. And so there wasn't even an element of trolling in many ways. And that's the thing that surprised me is, the Great British Swim turned into a community that was so positive. And I think actually it was embodied by the very fact, swimming in at the end, I said, this has never been an individual sport because of the team on the crew, because of the sport on social media, everything. And I said, so I want to swim in with everybody. I want everybody to enjoy the Great British Swim. It's not mine to enjoy, it's everybody's. And so we speculatively sort of said, look, for health and safety reasons, we've got 300 spaces. If you want to come out, and this is what I love again about the British eccentric, 300 places. If you want to turn up, it's going to be 7 o'clock in the morning in November on a beach in Margate in the middle of the sea. Do you want to go and meet a guy you've never met and swim in? And those 300 places went in, I think it was like 5 minutes, you know, and it was crazy. So yeah, that's what I think. To go back and like I said, the Captain Web, the British eccentric, it was like, and you know, I mean, I love the events that you do when the energy in the room, you know, and we talked about, we're both fans of like Elliot Hulse and Wim Hof, and you get like the whole room doing moving meditation, breathing exercises. It's just, you're like, what is this? It's like the energy in the room.
It felt good. Meeting those people in the water.
I felt, almost like it was like an aquatic version of what you've done. And I said this ages ago when I was looking, I was like, oh, and that's why that's why I was gutted I didn't come to Iron Mind, because I see what you create here at London Real, and I was like, that's cool. But the thing with me is, like, I never recommend my life to anyone. You know, I'm like, don't do what I do. But for those people to come out at the end, I got to experience what you've created here at London Real in a similar way, in a weird way, in the middle of the sea in Margate, and it was really cool.
Because for all of your other feats, you're there alone usually at the finish line, right? No one wants to stay up all night for you to finish a marathon or a rope climb or go to the Caribbean and watch you tow a tree through the water. So this was one of the times where you actually you felt all that human energy, and it felt good. Yeah,
it's exactly it. And that's because I think, and actually for a lot of people probably watching, when they say, I want to do something similar, how do I do it? And I'm like, well, you look at the Great British Swim and you've got to know that's the sum and substance of over 10 years of doing this. You know, and I did it initially, as you know, to raise money for charity, Teenage Cancer Trust, because of my friend. So I did it purely, one, to give myself something to train for. When I stopped playing international sport, I wanted something to do. And then two, it was really just to do something that was bigger than the event itself and bigger than me. And if that was raising money, getting people involved, that was always the thing. But for anyone watching, so how do I kind of get involved? You've got to understand, I always started off, and even with this, I start off with like, how can I do this with the least resources? So when I did the World's Strongest Marathon, that was when we first caught up, I was like, I can run a marathon, because you can do that anywhere, you know, as long as I've got something flat, and I've got a car, you know, it's an old car, and I've got a harness that my friend, strongman, you know, Jeff Capes lent me one as well, like 2-time World Strongest. He was like, there's an old one you can have, and I was like, cool. So I was like, I've got a harness, and then I was like, my girlfriend, she'll probably sit in the car, like, while I pull it for a marathon, like, she's used to, and I was like, so what do you need to run a marathon pulling a car? Nothing, it's free, you know, and I found a car park near my house. I was like, I'll do it there. As long as we record the whole thing, you know, it would be cool. So I did that. But what happened is Silverstone Race Circuit, because my friend who we were raising money for with Teenage Cancer Trust was an amazing motor racer. And so Silverstone wanted to do something to help. So they threw me the keys to Stowe Circuit, and they went, here you go. And I was like, really? They were like, yeah, just use it as long as you want. World's longest rope climb. I mean, that was the first time that genuinely that anybody paid any attention. When you came to the middle of the field in like Hertfordshire, and we got up and you were like, yeah, I'll come out. And you got the drone stuff. So you have no idea how much that meant, because you've got to remember before that, everyone was just like, oh, there's a crazy guy who runs around like pulling a cart. You were the one who actually came out with the world's longest rope climb. I was like, I'll video you, mate. And I was like, thanks, Brian. And then it was after that I did the triathlon and things like that. So I can't actually remember the question you're saying, but I think it's nice just to start with.
People want to know how to do something like this, and you said, what? Just start.
Start something, and it can be so small. And another nice thing, even this, honestly, I love this story. But after the triathlon, I did that, as you know, in Nevis to raise awareness for their eco projects. Wants to become the world's first carbon neutral island by 2020. So I did their triathlon, carrying a tree, and called it a triathlon. And that was the thing. So somebody saw that, and there was a guy out in, I think he was from New Zealand, and he ended up doing it with 100 pounds of dog food to raise money for the dog shelter back home. And I was just like, I love that. You've just taken it and just made it your own and done it. And the triathlon was already set up in his hometown, so all the health and safety was there. And he just went up to the organizer and he just said, hey, I'm going to do it, but carrying dog food. And the organizer was like, okay. And so then it didn't cost him any more than it would have done to enter a normal triathlon. And you get, I think the point, I suppose I was, in a roundabout way, is you still get those moments, and it doesn't need to be as grand as the Great British Swim. You can do it,
Right.
Yeah.
This was kind of born out of a bit of a failure, right? Because
Yeah.
the last time you were here, we talked about that 100-kilometer swim in the Caribbean, towing the tree, right? And you were down there, and you had the crew, and you had the boats, and tides were just punching you in the face. And you, in typical Ross Edgley fashion, you went back in for more and back in for more. And as I remember, you came back, and on the back of that, you went for like a 48-hour-long swim and swam some ridiculous distance, probably a world record in itself. And I don't know, were you already thinking about this race then? Or just talk about how a quote-unquote failure can lead to a quote-unquote success.
Yeah. And actually, when I was finishing in November, I posted that on social media because everyone was seeing the Great British Swim and saying that's amazing. And I was like, but you've got to understand, a year ago, I was sat on the island of Martinique with a tree attached to my trunks, my face battered by salt water, and I had failed to swim from St. Lucia to Martinique. So you quite rightly said, from Martinique to St. Lucia, it was, and that was from the triathlon. So the idea, to go back to that, it was the triathlon where I did a triathlon carrying a 100-pound tree. And an evolution of that was to swim from Martinique to St. Lucia, just towing a tree. Again, for Chester Zoo and wildlife charities. So we started to do that. It's swimming from point to point, 40 kilometers. I didn't do it. And you quite rightly said, the tides were so bad. So I went in, didn't make it. I then swam back the other way, didn't make it again. So in total, I swam, although it's only 40 kilometers, I ended up swimming over 100 kilometers, towing a 100-pound tree for over 32 hours in the water, battling waves. So everyone was like, those metrics were amazing. And I was like, but I didn't swim, I didn't touch land to land. I didn't do what I said I was gonna do. And so for me,
Bothered you.
It did at the time, but now what's weird, so the metrics were good, but I had failed to swim from land to land. Fast forward a year, and I said I'd do the Great British Swim in 100 days. That's the metric. It was 157, so I failed at that. But it did not matter. I'd swum from point to point. And that was what was interesting on this, is even in February, when me and you caught up, I was still treating it as an athlete, and I was still saying, these are the metrics, I'm gonna race this, I'm gonna do it really, really quickly. And I was thinking like an athlete. And then something happened where, it was my girlfriend's birthday and she was on the boat. And I was just like, I could be really selfish here and be like, I've got tide changes, I'm gonna swim. Or, we can watch dolphins and watch the amazing sunset. And so we did that. And then other birthdays happened. My own birthday happened. And Matt, the captain, I remember, he's like me. He's so competitive. And we were like, 100 days. And then we got to Bristol and he was like, Ross, it's my son's graduation. And I was just like, you've got to go. You're 100%. I mean, I've got to stay on the boat. I'm not allowed to touch that, but you go. So we did. And so we missed a day there. So sometimes, as much as I talk about, the central governor and everything, it was also like I think the Great British Swim went from being a race to an adventure. And that was the difference, a race to an experience. And I think if I had just gone for it, I'd probably be sitting here right now with you going, I did it in 100 days, right? And you'd be like, what was it like? I'd be like, I don't know. I just was staring at the bottom of the seabed, and is that an adventure? I don't know, so it's weird. Maybe you can have one or the other, but St. Lucia was a success in terms of the metrics, a failure in that, I feel with St. Lucia, the athlete in me was happy because the metrics were good. I set loads of PBs, I'd never swum so far. The adventurer didn't swim from point to point. Now, I'm just like, after 157 days, I'm like, the athlete and the adventurer in me is happy. I'm just happy, it didn't matter if it was 100 days or not. Minke whales, jellyfish, 157 days, I don't care. I swam where I go for it and I'm done. And I can honestly say that, whereas I didn't in February when we caught up, I was like, Brian, I got unfinished business.
Did that quote unquote failure in the Caribbean set the stage for the Great British Swim, or were you going to do that either way?
I think it set the stage, and probably, to be honest with you, it almost lit a fire under my belly a little bit. Lit a fire in my belly, not under my belly, whatever the term is. Just because I trained so hard for that swim in the Caribbean. All my family had flown out. My mum, my dad, my brothers, my girlfriend, they all flew out. And I remember all the time that I was swimming, this solitary confinement, I remember thinking, this is where every cold morning swim and attaching a tree to my trunks in Windermere Lake, I was like, this is gonna be worth it, because imagine what it's going to feel like in St. Lucia, in the Caribbean, sitting there with all my family around. It was my mum's 60th as well. I was like, it's going to be amazing. She's going to remember this, right? That's going to be so good. And then instead, I'm sitting there in Martinique, and my dad's got his arm around me going, oh, it's all right, mate. Like, we're all really proud of you. And I'm like, I know you are, but this isn't how it was meant to end. It almost didn't compute for me. I was like, this isn't, like, what? Like, this isn't a fairy tale ending. It was almost like, that's not meant to happen. I've been thinking about this all year for hours, like, when I've been swimming. Like, so I was like, no, that's not how it's meant. So that's why I came back home and I was like, it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. And then, so that's why I did the Royal Marine swim. But that wasn't for any accolade. I mean, that was behind closed doors. I just did it with the Royal Marines. I swam. And what was weird about that one is the Royal Marines were amazing. They knew I had to get it out my system. And I finished, and they were like,
how long was that?
The 48-hour swim, I think it was like 140 kilometers or something in the end. And, I got out, and then I just went, good. And they were like, should we go to bed now? I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to bed. There's no celebration. It was like, thanks, guys.
That's so you, just to go do that. Alone in a pool for 48 hours.
But yeah.
Swim 140 kilometers.
But that was the litmus test. It was just like, I just needed to know intrinsically, no, sort of celebrations.
If you had it in you, you wanted to know.
Yeah. And then after that, I was like, you're swim fit, you're good in the sea, you're swim fit now. And I was just like, I kind of wanted that fairy tale ending. And then yesterday, like I said, I got it. And I came in yesterday, my mum and my dad, my two brothers, massive hug, my girlfriend, I got a trident, they made me a trident. I was like, awesome. And I was like, and I looked around and I was like, that's how it was meant to end. That, and I was kind of like, honest. So I don't know, I know we were just speaking of it, and you were talking, about Ironman, and you felt like afterwards, you felt cathartic, you were like, that's cool. And I bet at the premiere, you were like, that was a journey. And you said it, close the chapter, and I'm asking you now, like, what's next? And I think you were like, well, you got to close those chapters. And I was like, yeah. But no, genuinely, I feel more, you're looking at me.
You feel satisfied.
Yes, is the best way to put it.
You should. I mean, it's a massive accomplishment, man. And everyone's been following you. Rich Roll was talking about it when we were here. The whole world's talking about it. With the social media component, the Red Bull weekly videos have been amazing. There's 23 in total, I think.
Yeah.
Involving social media. So how do you feel now? After it's 24 hours since you came on that beach. How do you feel?
You said it best, actually, just then, satisfied. Yeah, just kind of satisfied. But it is always strange. I mean, my girlfriend knows. She kind of looked at me and was like, you're not going to do anything. I said, I won't do anything this year. But I don't know. I just, and now I'm fascinated, actually, by, again, not getting like necessarily too deep, but looking at almost like, why we do what we do as humans. Like, what is it that, as Homo sapiens, forced us to kind of go from Africa and think beyond the horizons? Why did the Polynesians decide to invent all sorts of boats and go in search of, James Cook as well, British man? Why did he all of a sudden go from sort of Britain all the way and discover Hawaii, eventually to his death and stuff, that fatal voyage and stuff? What was it? Captain Webb, actually, I mean, this is probably going down a little bit of a rabbit hole and stuff, but this is one thing I've been thinking a lot. But Captain Webb, I spoke about so much about the English Channel, but after that, whether he needed to, another swim or whatever, I don't know what it was, but he decided to try and swim across, I think it was Niagara Falls, and eventually to his death. They even found his body, and he didn't even drown. His body was crushed by the weight of the water. Right. And gonna be completely honest, like there was times, during the swim where it was just like dark moments, like I said, and I almost went completely feral because but equally was like, is this Captain Webb-esque? Do you know what I mean? And stuff. It's just like, do you stick or twist? Do you gamble? Like, and do you know what I mean? It's like, when is enough enough? Like, it's Shackleton as well. So a lot of people talk about, Shackleton, an amazing explorer, went to the Antarctic and led his men through the most adverse conditions imaginable. And he's now quite rightly celebrated for all that he achieved. But also he died in debt. And he was always trying to go on these expeditions to probably sort of, whether it was to solve a financial issue that he had or, this kind of innate desire to fulfill, I don't know. So honestly, like during the whole swim, I was actually sort of sitting there and thinking like, a lot of people will celebrate the British eccentric, but when's enough? Because there's a fine line between being celebrated and not. If I was sitting here right now and I made it as far as Scotland, do you know what I mean? And it's just like my phone's gone crazy. I've not really checked it for the last 24 hours because I can't keep up with everything, and it's amazing. But I can't remember who it was now. I mean, Daniel Cormier recently, I love UFC, as you know, beat Derek Lewis. And he said, he goes, I don't check my phone after a fight. He goes, because people can see that you've seen their messages. And he said, but you've got to understand it's impossible to reply to everybody because you're then having conversation with 1,000 people. And that's kind of what it feels like. But there was another, I think it was, I don't know who it was now. I don't know if it was a UFC fighter or a boxer, but they said, when I won a world title, I had 1,000 missed calls, and when I lost, I had 2. It was from my mum and an unknown number, and it was just kind of like, so sorry to come back to the Captain.
So you're trying to make sure that you realize that people are celebrating the event and not necessarily you, and that if you didn't make the event, you might not get this, so you're trying to take some of this in stride?
I just, maybe just like how, be happy in yourself. If I'd have turned up yesterday, and I think what it was is certainly going around Scotland, which was the harshest moment. I remember thinking, like, why are you doing this? And it was something innate. It was something that I honestly think, we humans, something within it. I know I probably have it, but why we wanted to climb Everest, Polynesians cross the oceans. I have whatever that is. I don't know what, wanderlust, but there's something probably a bit more because it's this sense of, fusing wanderlust with mental and physical fortitude. I don't know why I do it, but it's innate.
But it's pure human spirit. I mean, that's all you have left when you're in Scotland and the weather is horrible and it's freezing. I mean, you strip it all the way down and take the feral out of it. I mean, it's this spirit that's left, right?
Yeah. Just like, it is. Or not even like human spirit. You like, when it's so animalistic, you've got to understand why a feral dog will like fight to the bitter end against a lion, and it's because it's just, there's something that that will to survive and stuff, but then not only survive, but thrive, like achieve something, so, and I don't know, like, so in Scotland, and I still don't have the answers, it's still so raw as you can imagine, but I remember in Scotland thinking like, make sure you're finishing this, Ross, for the right reasons. So Captain Webb, history sort of says that he did that final fatal swim because it was believed that some of his money had run out, and he was a devoted husband by all accounts, so he wanted to provide for his family. And when he was heading off to the final swim, apparently they said, how much money have you got left? Are you doing this for the right reasons? And he said, well, not a lot of money from the Channel swim. And they said, I advise you to keep whatever you have left and go and take your wife and try and live as humbly as possible. But he, with this innate desire, wanted to do something for his wife. So in a similar way in Scotland, I suppose I felt like, do this for the right reasons.
And what are those right reasons and what are the wrong reasons?
I don't know the reasons, but the reason I was carrying on swimming, because I said, if I arrive in Margate and there's just my mum, dad, my 2 brothers and my girlfriend, and we go for a pizza and go home, will you be happy? And I was like, I'd be really happy. Like, honestly, I don't know why, so I don't know the reasons, but I remember at that moment I'd be really happy.